Everyone knows Marty Lee, or Heinous if you really know him from back in the day. He's that guy from Erie who plays guitar for Donnie Iris and the Cruisers. But of course, he had years of honing his chops before he landed that gig. He played in the very popular Red, White, and Blueberry, and then in bands like Reel to Reel, The Fabulous Nobodies, and eventually The Pulse, which led him to meeting Donnie. I interviewed Marty years ago for my book on the Erie County Fieldhouse and a subsequent blog that I wrote in 2015. Each time he's been super accommodating and patient with me, and I appreciate him taking the time to chat with me. So here's episode 29 featuring Marty Heinous, or Lee, whichever you prefer. All right, Marty Heinous, welcome to the Erie Music History Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for talking to me again. We talked way back in 2015, and we probably talked back in 2012 when I wrote my book about the Fieldhouse. You were gracious enough to give me some good quotes for that, talking about your time with Donnie playing at the Fieldhouse. But you also, and we're going to cover this today, you played at the Fieldhouse a few other times with Red, White, and Blueberry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So now, am I correct in saying you still live in, is it North Canton, Ohio, somewhere around there?
I do. And I also, I don't work in North Canton, so okay. I keep an apartment near where I work, and I shuffle back and forth between those places.
Still doing graphic design?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have your own business still, or?
No, I don't. I like to design, and this might make some sense. I like to design CDs and albums, all the artwork for that, and I do it for a lot of my friends. And I have for years. And so I do that not really as a business.
Sure.
But to help out, because I can.
You used to do all the stuff for Michael Stanley, right?
I did. For years, I did all Michael's stuff, including his last one.
Mm-hmm.
He was great. He was a pleasure to work with.
Did you ever play with him, or just knew him from?
We never played a show together in the same band, but our two bands, Donnie Iris Band and Michael Stanley Band, were linked by way of our management company, which is the Belkin organization. So we sort of were all part of the same family.
Mm-hmm.
And so we played lots and lots of shows together. And the two bands in, I'm not sure the year, might be 83. We set I'll have to look up the date, but we set the record at Blossom,
right,
for 4 nights of shows. I'm not sure exactly what the number is, but for 4 days, we were somewhere in the 68 to 70,000 fans.
Wow.
I think that's still the record.
That's cool. Yeah. I remember obviously seeing you guys back in the 80s, and it seemed like you were either opening for them or vice versa, or, they were on the same bill. And
yeah, well, anywhere around Ohio, we would open for them no matter what, because they were just, this is their turf, and well earned.
Sure.
And we would travel maybe a bit more outside of the area, and around the US, where we had fans in other places, and theirs tended to be, not exclusively, but tended to be in this region.
Mm-hmm.
So when we came in this region, they were the headliner, and that was fine. We had a great time.
Yeah.
I loved all those shows. We did lots, more than I could count.
I'm sure. And I know that I'm going to be testing your memory today, so I apologize in advance. So,
well, I'll do my best.
All right. Well, yeah. So everybody seems to know a lot about you from obviously Donnie Iris and the Cruisers and that part of your career. But today we're going to talk about what happened before that, back when you were growing up in Erie. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I went to school in Northeast.
Okay.
And after graduating, moved to Erie. I started attending Penn State Barron, and I didn't stay there more than about a year. And then I worked full time and started playing music on the side. And then it kind of switched and I started doing music full time and still staying in Erie. And
well, take me all the way back when you first started playing. How old were you playing guitar?
First started playing guitar at all.
Yeah.
I was probably 12.
I know eventually you take lessons from Ed Pouton and you guys shack
Yeah.
up together and live together for a little while,
Yes,
right?
that's right. Yeah.
But he couldn't have been he wasn't your first teacher, I would imagine.
No. One of my first teachers was Pat Tallarico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he used to teach out in the West Erie Plaza at Osiki Brothers Music. There was a music store there. Sure. They had a couple of stores in town. West Erie Plaza was one of them, and I'd go there and take lessons from Pat. I mean, not for a long time, but we did. But he was one of my first official teachers, and I think Ed came after that. Okay. And I took lessons from Basil Ronzetti, and I took lessons from Preston Lindy.
Oh, wow.
And those were my guitar teachers, and all those guys are really skilled and knowledgeable. Yeah. I don't know, I've lost track of pretty much all of them. I did see Pat a few years back. We played out in Phoenix, and he came and we hung out the whole time I was there, and that was great fun. But Ed, I know is still around, but we've lost track of each other as well.
Sure.
The other two guys, I just once I left the Erie area, I was not in touch with them at all.
Well, Basil and Preston, a lot of folks, as well as with Ed, attribute their guitar skills to those guys. Basil especially.
Yeah, just extremely. I mean, he had lots of knowledge that I I wasn't able to take advantage of. I didn't have enough. I guess there was enough raw material to work with for him, because he really had lots and lots of knowledge.
Yeah,
and he wasn't a guitar player. If I'm not mistaken, he just he was just a musically gifted, and so he decided to teach guitar playing.
Right.
Whereas Preston definitely was a guitar player.
Sure.
Yeah.
Where was Basil teaching you at the time? Markham?
Oh gosh,
or somewhere downtown. I can't remember.
But I can't remember where.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a lot of actually, I didn't take a lot of lessons from any of them.
Okay.
But I got some knowledge from each of them, and I'm sure it's all relevant, so it's all in there somewhere.
And you and Pat must be pretty close in age, right?
We are, yeah.
Yeah, so you were taking lessons from a guy that was, your age at the time.
Yeah, but Pat, he had some skills, and he was happy to share. He's very generous with all of that. And then, of course, and we'll get into this, a few years after that, and I was applying what he was showing me, and I played around. There was an opportunity in Red, White, and Blueberry, because they were in existence before I came along, for sure. Yeah. And then they had a lead guitarist named Bernie, but I can't remember Bernie's last name. But DiNardo, that's right. And he left the band, and I got a shot to join the band, and it was great. That was a great thing to be a part of.
And we'll talk a lot about Red, White, and Blueberry today, because that is a band that was super popular in the early 70s in Erie. A lot of people have fond memories of it.
Me too.
And I mean, everybody remembers you playing in that band. Was there bands before that for you?
Yeah, I'm never going to remember all the bands and all the players in the bands.
Right.
But I had bands, in my teen years. I started out on drums. I did play guitar, but my first bands, I was a drummer.
Okay.
And then the second band or bands or whatever, I played bass.
Okay.
And then the next sort of set of bands, I could name these bands. No one would know them except the players in the bands. My first band was the Convicts with a K. I played drums.
Okay. All right.
And then,
You're how old? Like 12?
12, 13, 14 years old. Yeah.
Did the Convicts play anywhere?
Yeah. I mean, we played, in Northeast at the American Legion and stuff like that. So the way it was, the two primary players in the band at the beginning were was my friend John Cunningham, who I've also lost touch with, and he and another fella named Danny Bagley, they were a duo, sort of a Beatles folk duo, and they played in Northeast, and I saw them playing. I thought it was amazing. That's all I remember. They were just amazing. And then I was working with my stepfather at his repair shop. He fixed cars. And I was working it was a summertime, and I remember, and I couldn't have been, I'm maybe 14. I'm sure I wasn't 15. And they came up to me, and I didn't really know them. And they said, the Ouija board said that you could play drums. So I lied, and I said, oh yeah, I can play drums. And I couldn't.
Yeah.
No. So, I had played a little bit of snare drum in 6th grade, but I had never played a drum set in my life. And they brought me over to their house where they had an old drum set that they had freshly painted. So to me, it looked like this amazing, awesome thing. And it was, painted with a brush.
Yeah.
It was just, awful. But I didn't know any different. And then they quickly realized that, I couldn't play them. I couldn't at all. But they kind of were in deep at that point. They kind of committed, so John decided to teach me. And and that was my first. So he taught me all the drum parts to all the songs that we were going to do. We played Beatles songs, and eventually I learned, and then I got myself my own drum set with my parents' help, and so that, again, we're talking like 14 years old, and then as I said, I moved to bass, and then I started. I don't remember what the turning point was for me, but I wanted to play electric guitar. I'd only had acoustic up to that point.
Okay.
So I just started woodshedding, and probably from 16, 17, 18 years old, I was playing like more than, a well-adjusted person should play. So I'll just say, I mean, it was nothing to play 8 to 10 hours a day, every day. Wow. Every chance I could get, I played.
And
through high school, I would just, I made time for some extracurriculars, but I was just playing privately. And then I would get into a band that would last for a little while.
Yeah.
And I, just by doing that so much, what I did was, if this is interesting to you, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn how to play songs by, my guitar heroes like Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and Johnny Winter and all these players, but they played so fast. So I don't know where the idea came from, or if I'd read about it or something, but I had a turntable, and I took it to a repairman who fixed such things, and I said, this thing plays at 33 RPM, but I wanted to play at 16 RPM, and it didn't have a 16. So he set the belts so that it would play at half speed, and then that slowed all the parts down.
Right.
And of course, when you do that, the pitch also goes down an octave.
Sure.
But that allowed me to learn these parts, and that's what I did. So I played records at half the speed, learned the parts, and then gradually played them faster and that's how I, in many ways, I taught myself a lot of what I play.
Sure.
Then, as I took lessons from the guys we talked about before, I could apply. I had some playing ability, and then I could apply more theory that they shared with me, and then those two things kind of combined, and
Gotcha.
that's how that all happened.
You know, I've interviewed a bunch of folks for the podcast so far, but I've never had a Northeast grape picker on, you know, and
That's right, buddy.
and you know, I always hear from those other folks, you know, that played in Erie, you know, hey, when I was young, we had the opportunity to do YCO and those types of things. Being in Northeast, you mentioned what, the American Legion or something like that. Were there other
We
places
played at the American
kids to play?
Legion. We played at the American Legion. We would play at maybe a high school event.
Yeah.
There was also a YMCA there, and I'm not sure if I was old enough to play at the time they were. Anyway, that was another place to play. That was it, you know.
Okay. Yeah.
Of course, I was underage. I couldn't take gigs at bars, which I'm sure there were some of those.
Right.
Yeah, so that's how that went. You know, I just played around those kinds of things until I got a little bit older and I could go and play in some of the bars, and then I would do that with some bands.
And you eventually start teaching at Bowlings too, right? Like, how old were you then?
No, that was quite a bit later on.
Okay. All right.
I didn't teach till I'm sure I was in my 20s. I would have no business teaching before then, believe me. Yeah, no, you know,
so
there's a lot of wrong notes along the way, and that's kind of how you get better, right? You just make mistakes and learn from them.
Sure.
So sure. I made lots.
Well, that's why you were practicing 6 to 8 hours a day, evidently.
Yeah, I did it. It was kind of extreme.
So the Convicts don't last long. You go in and out of some other
bands, you know, with friends, you know,
right.
good friends, and you know, that band called Fireworks with a fellow named John McClain and my dear friend Mike Cookless, and we were in another band called Eris. These are all, you know, maybe they last a year, something like that. You know, we'd had fun. We played, you know, around wherever we could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All covers? Were you doing any originals?
All covers.
All covers. Okay.
Yeah.
And so is Red, White, and Blueberry the first like big band that you joined, or real successful band, I should say?
Unless I'm missing something in the timeline, I think they were.
Okay. All right. Like you said, they started around 72, 73 with Bernie on lead guitar.
Okay.
But John Erickson was already there. Bert was there playing drums, playing all the drums.
Lots of drums.
Every drum there was available.
Lots of drums. That's right. You have really
was
good.
Pat in the band already when you?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So that must have been pretty cool. Like, you knew Pat. Is that how you got into the band?
Well, I'm sure, you know, and I don't know that we ever talked about it, and maybe we did, and I've forgotten it. Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know how I would have gotten in that band had I not known Pat, because I didn't know the other guys.
Okay. All right.
So, you know, I don't remember. I don't remember another. I mean, I played in bands, and, you know, I think I played pretty well, but, you know, maybe I'm missing something in my memory, but I think that was the first band. And it was a big step up from most of the bands in the year at the time in terms of like production.
Right.
You know, they had, you know, crew, you know, a truck, his PA system, lights, all that stuff. And John Erickson was, you know, really talented, you know, technician. So he would build a lot of these devices that we would use.
Yeah, you guys did have quite a lot of devices from what I
built
understand.
Things. We had rotating big mirrors. And,
what was that big mirror above?
Yeah,
Bert, right?
it's another one. Pretty much, I imagine it might have come from Bert's mind or John's, but John could bring these things to life, and it would rotate. It had a name on the one side, and then in the middle of the drum solo it would flip around, and it was mirrors, so you could. It was a whole giant mirror, and you could look down and see from the top down. You know, now we would do it with cameras and big screens, right? But at the time, it was, you know, sort of a, you know, a version of that where you could see from a different angle. The audience could see Bert from the top.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I heard about you guys is that you did have that crew. You had Bruce Shampoo, all right, and
Yes.
Victor Lever on sound. Later, you had some other roadies, John DiNardo, Phil Thomas. I know that I'm
Yes.
probably missing some guys, but I mean, it was a lot of stuff. It was a lot of lights. It was a lot of sound, and it
Yeah.
was a spectacle, right?
To a certain extent, yeah, it was. We had sound and lights, and I don't remember. I mean, I think we had flash pots and fog and
Yeah,
all that stuff, and we rolled a lot of it out and made a rock concert out of it,
right.
and so it was uh you know it was a real nice introduction to that whole kind of scene, to the production on that level. Then, subsequently, then the other bands that I got into, which were really good musically, but didn't have that kind of production.
Yeah.
It was a big, like you say, spectacle.
And you guys, you traveled. You did, a lot of one-nighters. You did
Yeah,
colleges, high schools,
yeah.
bars.
Colleges, high schools, we roll in and just like you would do it. The crew goes in, sets up the gear. We go in, we do sound check. We have, a lighting guy, sound guy. It's all,
Right.
we did all that stuff at a not, most bands weren't doing that. In my opinion, I don't remember most bands doing that. But
Sure.
we were doing that. I stepped into that. I didn't have anything to do with building that aspect of it.
Oh,
I
okay.
just stepped in as the guitarist, one of the guitarists.
Right.
Pat being the other one, of course.
Well, your manager eventually becomes Joel Miller.
Correct. That's right.
Who is a great historian on Facebook and, has really provided me with a lot of the background information. So thank you, Joel.
Yes, thank you, Joel. Joel's, he was a really good promoter, not only just a supporter of the band, and he's always been a supporter of music, obviously, but he worked really hard to raise the visibility of the band, and I'm sure he had a lot to do with us playing some of the shows you were talking about it at the field house we played before Bachman Turner Overdrive and ZZ Top.
Right.
And we did a lot of college shows, and Joel would just, driving force in, believed in the band. And
any memories of those field house shows? Did you meet the guys in ZZ Top or BTO at all? Or
I didn't meet those guys.
No.
I don't have any memories like that to share, but it was lots of fun. What? I'm sorry?
It was a long time ago.
A long time ago. I remember the shows,
Sure.
but as I say, we didn't meet them. It was all we could do to, because those were even a step up from what we were trying to do. But we had a little preparation for that kind of thing, but that's on another level entirely.
Right.
A touring act like that. But it gave us good experience and gave us, some perspective that probably helped us in maintaining that sort of that spectacle that you keep referring to.
Yeah.
That probably helped us because we felt like we belonged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and that was good for us. Yeah.
Joel, one of the things that he talked about on this one Facebook post was he said that you did a week-long appearance on the WQLN auction, and every day for 5 days straight, between 5 and 6 during the auction, they would cut to you guys performing 1 or 2 songs in the studio. Were you in the band then, or?
I may have been, but I don't remember that. So,
all right. Yeah, he said it was May of '76. So,
wow. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Scott Campbell came in maybe a little bit later. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the band then evolved. Pat and I were gone.
Right.
And I didn't remember. I do not remember that part of things. I mean, I remember being in the band. I remember not being in the band. but I don't recall, why things changed, and but they did. I honestly, I'm being honest, I don't remember if somebody quit or I sort of think that Pat had decided to move out of the area.
Okay.
And I think that's what happened. And at that point for me, I thought Pat was, pretty much the star of the band. I mean, everybody contributed and everybody, had their little spots, but I thought Pat was the center of the thing, with being the lead singer. I sang, but he was the lead singer. And with him leaving, if I'm remembering this right, that wasn't.
I think you went on to do ATV after that, right?
Well, yeah, you
sure.
got me. I don't remember.
Yeah. And again, Joel is the historian on that. I think I've read that on some of his posts.
I would defer to Joel.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
You guys do record a 45, which a lot of people still have these days.
Yeah.
Has
I
a
even
song
have a
you
few.
wrote. You have a few of them too?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
So For a Change, which Pat wrote, and then Boogie, which you wrote, right?
Yeah, true. That's right.
All right. Have you listened to those songs in decades, or?
I haven't. I
no?
haven't. No.
All right. I'm going to have to find some recordings of those.
Oh, goody.
I'll include those with your, on your episode page. I'll include some pictures of you in these bands over the years.
We didn't know what the hell we were doing. I don't, but yeah, we did do that. Yeah.
What was there a plan to record more, like an album or anything, or was it just?
I don't remember that being discussed. I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So eventually you do leave, and that leads you to Reel, right?
Yes.
So now you're in Reel wearing some interesting outfits. You're wearing sort of the tuxes and more.
Yeah, I think that was the first. Yeah, not really. Reel went through a few different iterations. At one point, it was, at that time, disco and that whole genre of music was just huge.
Yeah,
it was everywhere. And if you wanted to play live music, you were going to play that or you weren't going to work.
Sure.
And that was it. So there was a whole period there for a year or two, seems like an eternity, when that's the only work that could be had. So we would dress the way we needed to dress to get into the places that were available so we could continue to play music and continue to earn some money doing so. Right. And that's how that went. So Reel, yeah, it seems like that probably was how it started. I know at one point it was more of a rock band.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if it started out that way and evolved into the disco, or if the disco came first. I don't remember which came first.
I know.
But I would be inclined to think it started out as the disco and then got more rock.
Gotcha.
I'm not positive.
I saw that you played places like the Gaslight Lounge at the Liberty Plaza, Lord Bethwick, in the West Erie Plaza.
We did, and when we were playing there, we were playing more rock tunes.
You were, okay.
So maybe it was that we started out that way, and then those kind of gigs dried up.
Yeah,
and we switched to I should have probably looked up some of these dates so I could get things in the right order.
Well, I think I've got it right. And Joel also was helping manage the band at the time. Originally, Bill Cotter's in the band. Denny Guzik's in the band for a little while. Dennis Cohen's in the band for a little while. Jeff Berger, obviously, and Jeff Toone. Eventually, the band morphs into the core group of, and correct me, I think this is right, Mike Goodwin on keyboards, Steve McConnell on drums, you and Paul Gall. Paul's on bass, and Ralph Lyons. He was like a singer from out of town.
He was with us for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. I want to say he was from the Meadville area, but I may be mistaken. Okay. He was a really good singer.
Was that your first time playing with Paul Gall, who you still play with today?
Yeah, in that band. Yes, Paul and I have known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you even played, the three of you, Steve played with you for a little while in Donnie. So that was, you had 3 year guys there.
Isn't that something? I
Yeah.
mean, we comprised most of the band, the three of us. And we would, in that configuration, we would get ourselves booked into places like Holiday Inns, but they really wanted that. They really wanted dance music and disco music. So what we would do, it would kind of conspire together, and we would learn songs that were disco songs. But then we'd take a whole section out of the middle of the song, and we would insert another song that we were more interested in playing. A song, jazz rock stuff by Jeff Beck and Billy Cobham and Chick Corea, I'm sure, all of these types of bands. And we would insert that in after everybody was up on the dance floor, and we would keep them dancing, because the tempos and they didn't really know what it was that we were playing.
Right.
and that's how we would kind of get away with it. We would get our bookings because the song list would show all these songs that they recognized, but
right.
They didn't really realize. But we kind of had to do that to keep our sanity. So we would just kind of extend the song. So instead of it being a 4-minute song, it's more like an 8 or 9 minute song with Jeff Beck in the middle of it.
Right.
Yeah. And that was good fun.
I'm sure.
And we were able to keep playing. If we were to just do the disco stuff exclusively, I think, well, it would have just driven us crazy, because it wasn't really the music that any of us wanted to play.
Yeah.
I'm not knocking it, because there's some interesting, good music that came out of that time, and the people that wrote it. I mean, I have respect. It's just wasn't our style.
Sure. Right. Yeah. Right. We mentioned Steve McConnell, and I interviewed him last year, and he mentioned in that episode that you and Mike Goodwin and he played in a short band called Opera. And you even remember that band?
And as a matter of fact, now when you're mentioning Steve, I also listened to Steve's.
His episode.
His episode too.
Yeah.
I'm recalling that now because you brought that up, and I remember him talking about opera. And yeah.
Did you remember it before hearing that?
No, but I mean, I remember it having my memory jogged. I remember the band, and we had a very interesting selection. That was really kind of fun. Band. I know Steve said some good things about it, and I think he's right. It just, the band didn't. Yeah, I don't know how popular we became. We just had a few places that we played, and it was, music I'd never played before.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's true. We did play in that band together.
And around this time, 75, 76, you and I talked last time, you get your famous 75 Les Paul, right? You go to Manny.
Is it famous?
Is it famous? I don't know. Do you still play
it? It's right? Famous to me.
Yeah, it's famous to you. I mean, heck, you recorded, that first album, right? With Donnie.
Yes.
Still play it.
Yes. It's still my main guitar. Yeah. And something happened. It gets better. I mean, these instruments, for some reason, we could go talking about that as a whole subject in itself, but that 75 Les Paul, the wood is, it's aged in a certain way. I know it sounds kind of esoteric, but I have to tell you, it's really hard. I've recently bought a Les Paul to try and put the same pickups in, the same electronics. It's got the same wood in the neck. It's built relatively the same way, and I can't make it sound like that one. So, I mean, I'm still playing it, and I use this other one, but I mean, I think I'll have to invest in another, let's see, 50-year-old instrument in order to get the sound of a 50-year-old Gibson.
Well, Scott Campbell said that he sold you a Les Paul in 1972. I imagine you don't have that one anymore.
He probably did, and I don't. The guitars that I parted with that I wish I had now, I once had a 1951 gold top Les Paul.
Whoa.
51.
Wow.
and there aren't too many of them.
Yeah.
And I sold it for $500 for tuition money for college.
Oh, geez.
I just needed money, and I had this, and they weren't valued like they are now. Now
Yeah.
that's not the most valuable of the 50s Les Pauls, but trust me when I say it's worth,
I bet.
much more than $500 if I had it now. And probably much more than $5,000. I don't even want to think about it. And there's many guitars like that. I wonder if Scott sold me a Firebird that I had.
He'll remember. I'll ask him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you said tuition. So did you go to Barron for 4 years, or what'd you do?
No, just about a year and a half.
All right. And then you just played music.
I dropped out and started working.
Yeah.
You know, I just needed to work.
You were working enough playing music, right?
I wasn't working enough to pay my bills.
No? Okay.
No.
What was your regular job?
I worked at a couple of places in here. I worked at a place called Warren Radio, which is an electronics store on.
I worked there too.
You did? You worked there?
I worked at Studio One. Yeah.
Okay.
In the 80s. So a division. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I worked there.
Tim McLaughlin there.
Okay. I worked there when John Erickson worked there.
John Erickson worked there too. Yeah. I knew that. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked at Warren Radio. I worked at a men's clothing store called P.A. Myers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just jobs.
Sure. Just jobs. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's what you got to do. Yeah. So eventually, and am I correct in our timeline here? You and Jeff and Bob leave to form the Fabulous Nobodies.
Yes.
78.
Yeah. Jeff Clare, Jeff Berger, Bob Berger, myself.
Now, at first, was Joey Celerino your drummer?
That could be, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I stand corrected.
That's all right. No, I know Toon played with, Bob pretty much for years, and we talked about that.
Yeah.
And
my bad. Of course, Joey was in it.
Yeah, I just talked to Joe.
Look, there's a whole lot of little iterations and bands of different members going in and out.
Oh, yeah.
It's fairly intricate time, as you look at it and try and unpack it all. But yeah, definitely that's the case. It eventually became Jeff Toon Clare.
Right.
But yeah,
it eventually becomes the Pulse. So you're eventually
the Pulse.
Yeah.
Started out playing the stuff that you play in Holiday Inns to get work. Again, there was this era, and that's what we had to do.
Right.
So we were playing just popular songs on the radio and all of that. And we somehow booked ourselves a string of shows in Florida, Lakeland, Florida, I don't know how many. And in those days, you'd play somewhere for a week or two, and you just set up and you'd play 2 or 3 or 4 nights, and that's what you'd do. Okay. And so we booked show down there, and whatever came over us, I don't know, but we had nothing really to do during the day, so we would go into the club. They'd allow us to go in there when no one was around, because it was rock club and dance club, so that there was nobody there all day long. And we go in and rehearse for hours, and we were learning new material and replacing the disco and dance stuff with rock tunes.
Gotcha.
And we had that string of shows, however long we were down there, and we left the Erie area as like a pop dance top 40 band.
And this is still the Fabulous Nobodies, or is this the Pulse already?
And we changed the name midstream.
Oh, okay.
And I think we came back as the Pulse and came back as a rock band.
Okay.
And we still were doing covers, but we started to do some originals. We were doing Cheap Trick, and it was a really wide range of songs and material. We did stuff by Steely Dan. We did stuff by Cheap Trick. We did stuff by Bruce Springsteen, Elvis Costello. We did all of that, and that was not the material we were doing when we left.
Right.
We came back with that, and we just kind of, the way I remember, we just said, okay, we're a rock band now.
I saw a picture of, there's like 5 guys, and I think Dickie Buckle was in the band, like on a slide.
Dickie played some shows, and
somebody said that slide picture was in Florida, so I assumed it was on this tour.
Yeah,
doing down
yeah. I don't remember how long that lasted, but
okay.
Yeah, he was around. Great guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
He was around, but we came back and it was a different thing. And then that's all we did was and Bob Berger's a terrific songwriter. So we started, doing his material. So we converted to a band that did original material, that being Bob's,
right.
and all these rock tunes, Springsteen and all this stuff, and we completely reconfigured the thing, and that was a fun time. And that, because we played a lot, and then we started being able to do opening shows for the Iron City House Rockers and Blue Angel, which was Cyndi Lauper's band, and the Artful Dodger, which was another, sort of indie type, bubbling under type band. And gosh, there are probably others. I don't remember them all.
It's funny. Yeah, I read something where a reviewer was saying exactly what you said. Like, they had reviewed you like a year before, and then they came back and they're like, yeah, this is a different band now. Like, they're way tighter and they're way more poppy and stuff like that. And
somebody else may remember it differently, but I remember it as we left as one kind, and we spent a lot of time. It's not like we just, snapped our fingers. We worked at it.
Right.
We spent our days developing, and I don't remember why we decided to do that. I have no idea what the plan was. But when we came back, we were different. And then all the shows got different, and we started getting opening things. Dennis Cohen was our manager,
right,
and he worked really hard to get us these opening shows, and we got in front of people, and we got into the Agora in Cleveland, and the Decade in Pittsburgh, and all of a sudden we were like a fairly visible regional band of some note. And
and then you release You Want to Know Why? Or
during that time, it was in that time. And we also, and I don't remember how this came about, but maybe Bob remembers, but he's got a better memory than I do.
He covered a lot of it in his episode. You're right. Yeah.
And I haven't listened to his yet.
Okay.
And so if I'm redundant here,
that's all right.
At least this way you've got credible information.
That's right. 2 sides of the story.
We ended up getting, I think we were submitting tapes of Bob's songs to all over the place, and there was a point at which Ed C., who was a producer in Atlanta, heard one of our demos.
Okay.
And ended up, we were invited down there to record, and they produced 2 or 3 songs, and they were shopping them around for us. We were at that point, we were kind of focused on trying to get a record deal.
Okay.
And so the band, was doing the live performances, but Bobby was writing, really, I call him Bobby, he goes by Bob now, but he was writing, a lot, and we weren't shy about putting his songs in the sets. And although it's tough, people want to hear a hit song by Bruce Springsteen. They don't necessarily want to hear a song they don't know about. But over time, people started to, come to our shows, and they wanted to hear the songs that the
Springsteen medley that you guys did.
Well, that too, but they wanted to hear our songs.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
Is what happened. And and we had it was an eclectic, I guess, mix of material, because we did a song by Weather Report, which is, not anything like Elvis Costello, but we would do Elvis Costello, and then we would do, I meant Cheap Trick, and we would do Steely Dan, and God, we would do songs from the 60s by Moby Grape and the Music Machine. Talk
Yeah.
was a great song for us live. And play all these, unusual songs.
Yeah, you started with Omaha usually, right? From Moby Grape.
Yes, gosh,
Yeah.
that's true, from Moby Grape.
Yeah, he
And-
talked about that. It's a killer song.
People who knew music I think they found the band pretty entertaining, because it's not, you're going to be out there listening to a lot of bands before you hear somebody play that song.
Right.
It's,
Yeah. I think Bob said that Joe Grishecki years later had said, he really loved it when you guys opened with that song, and he always remembered it, and it was one of his favorites.
Yeah, that sounds like Joe. And yeah.
So you're playing in the Pulse, and the Pulse is really a short-lived band. It's together in some way, shape, or form in a couple of years. You record the album. You're getting played on radio all the time.
Not an album, but songs.
I'm sorry, right. You're right.
Yeah.
The 2 songs. And then one night you're playing, and some skinny guy with glasses comes to see you, right? And that changes everything.
Yeah, we were playing down in New Brighton, PA, at a club called Maury's Speakeasy. I don't think it was the first time we played there. It was just one of the sort of regional places that we played. Medium size kind of rock bar club thing. We played many places.
Right.
Many, all over the place, all over the tri-state area. And guy came up and,
did you know Donnie?
Introduced himself. I didn't know. No, I didn't know who he was
right.
at all. And he introduced himself, and he said, I'm doing an album. Do you think you'd like to, play on the album? And I said, yeah, well, sure. But the thing is, at that time, and still, people come up to you with, and who knows what who they really are, what they really have going on, but they a lot of times pretend that they have things going on. They don't. And so I basically didn't believe him.
Right.
But he gave me his phone number, and I gave him mine. And I didn't think a whole lot about it, because there was a friend of mine named Rick Witkowski, which we didn't really talk about that part of things, but Rick Witkowski.
Oh, I wanted to get to that, because you got offered to join Crack the Sky.
Well, I was offered to audition.
Right.
And I did, and that went really well. But then the guitar player that was going to leave Crack the Sky decided not to leave.
Okay.
And I'd gone all the way down to Weirton, West Virginia, and auditioned, and Paul Gall came with me, actually. And I don't remember exactly where that was in the flow of things, but Rick Witkowski and I stayed in touch. And then Rick, I remember talking to him, and I told him, we were just talking because we talked as friends. And I said, yeah, I met this guy, Donnie Iris. And he says, Donnie Iris, you met him? I said, yeah. And I told him what had happened. He said, well, you should be pretty excited about that. Now, this was before our first album. Right. So all he knew about Donnie was him being in the Jaggers and being in Wild Cherry. And he knew he was really talented.
Sure.
Because that's what he had accomplished up to that point, which is no small feat.
Right.
Okay. He was a fairly big deal, but he wasn't Donnie Iris, the rock and roll guy that he became. Right. But he said, you should be excited at it. That should be fun. And so then when we, I don't know who called who, then I took it a little bit more seriously, because Rick had said I should. And then, and Donnie, he's a very kind of down to earth guy that doesn't plan a lot of things. Good things just happen to him. It's the way he is. And for him, Mark and he had been in Wild Cherry and wanted to do some work together and wanted to write and maybe do a record. And they were writing, and they were starting to record some demos, but they weren't settled on the band. They knew they wanted to use Kevin Valentine on drums, because Mark had played with him in Breathless. Kevin's really terrific. And they'd heard about this bass player from Youngstown named Al Britton McLean, who also had this giant reputation, you know, and well deserved. And they didn't have a guitar player. Now they knew guitar players, but for whatever, I have no idea why, they weren't settled on it. Just wasn't, they weren't ready to commit to anyone.
Mhm.
So as far as I understand, Donnie just, you know, would be his way, just said, well, I'll see if I can go hear somebody play. So the Maury Speakeasy is probably 3 miles from his house at the time. And he just drove down to the rock club that he would be nearby and came in, and we just happened to be there. And that was about as complicated as it was. And, you know, lucky for me, in terms of that opportunity, we played such a wide variety of songs that anybody that would come and see the band that would hear, whether they were making a kind of a observation about the keyboard player or the singer or the guitar player, they would hear somebody doing all kinds of music. So they would have to conclude, you know, because Bob Berger would sing these Elvis Costello songs, and he'd sing Bruce Springsteen. Those two songs, they're nothing alike, you know, and he'd do all these things in his original. So if you were going to hear our band, you'd conclude, well, this guy can sing anything, which he kind of can.
Yeah, yeah.
And the same way with guitar playing, because I'd have to play all these different styles, and the Pretenders, and they were all different, you know, radically different. So it was good from a showcase standpoint.
Right. Which
So
you didn't even realize that's what it was.
Yeah, so he was able to make a decision fairly quickly, because, well, this guy's really good. I don't know what I'm going to be asking him to do, but he just looks like he could do pretty much whatever I asked him to. I would presume he thought something along that line.
Yeah.
And so then that whole you know, sort of chapter began, and then I recorded and would go to Beaver Falls, and we would record. And we were just doing tracks. The way that the band records always did was we would do tracks, and then the vocals would go on top of that. But the songs would be built within the studio.
Okay.
You wouldn't really know what the song was going to be like. Even if I'm talking about Aaliyah, was just the chords, the bass and drums and guitar, and that's all it was. When I left the studio, I'm going, well, you know, it's kind of a heavy rocked out tune, but I had no idea. And the vocals are such a big part of that. When I came back to play a guitar solo, I was like, oh my gosh, really? You know, because I didn't expect, well, a lot of people didn't expect that. It was kind of a novel song at the time when it came out. But anyway, that's how that went. So I had to, as that album got finished, I was still playing with Pulse. Everything was fine. You know, we were just doing, we were trying to get a record deal, and that I didn't really give it a lot of thought. But what happened was then, you know, while I'm playing in the Pulse, that whole record took on a sort of a life of its own, and it was being promoted and all of that. And there was not originally a thought to having a band or anything. They just wanted to do this record, but because of Aaliyah, it got a lot of attention, and then some, you know, because radio stations were starting to pick it up. And then I started getting phone calls. They're saying, look, you know, there's a lot going on here. Is this something you'd be interested in? And so, you know, I had some hard decisions to make, because, you know, I love the guys in Pulse.
Sure.
Bob, you know, like my best friend.
Right.
And so leaving that was not an easy decision, and it was tough, you know, but you know, that's how that went.
And that was the end of your Erie music days.
End of my Erie music days. Although, you know, as time went on and I would come off the road and maybe not have any tour dates for several months, I would find things to do, and I would sometimes play with some other friends. Most notably, my friends Rick Scandalberry, and David Blates, and Matt. I'm trying to think of Matt's last name. Anyway, we had a little band called, was it Abstract Cats, or was it something else?
I remember that name. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we had a little duo with Rick Scantlebury too as Abstract Cats, but I can't remember what we used to call ourselves, but we would play.
Albert of India? Or
Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right.
Why wouldn't I think of that name, right?
It's a crazy name.
Yeah. Albert of India. So we would play, I would, when I could, so that I could still play, and they were really good musicians, and
sure.
Did that. Also played some, and I don't remember where this took. I played with some friends, in a band called the Blues. I think it was the Blues Beaters or something like that. It was a blues band with
Kevin. They're still around today. They're still around, still playing.
Kevin and at the time it was Ed Burnick and myself. I'm not going to remember everybody, but
no, yeah.
And I think it would change, be different guys in the band at one, and I would play in there doing some blues tunes. So what was the end of my Erie sort of regular playing, but still got a chance to do that.
So over the years, obviously you played with Donnie for all those years. Do you ever get back to Erie much? Do you have any family here anymore? Or?
My sister and her family are in Erie, and that's the only family I have in Erie.
Okay.
And I don't get back very often. I'm thinking about it this year, actually.
Well, Bob's coming in on July 1st to play with Dickie. So
yeah, I'm aware of that, and he's coming out this way and to visit me, and I'm gonna see him on the 4th.
And 20 years ago, had the heart attack on stage. Everything good?
Everything's good.
Since no, good.
It was good. It was yes.
That was a weird gig. I was there. Yeah.
Were you there? Yeah, that was really poor form on my part. I apologize for that. It ruined everybody's evening. I was well taken care of there, and I have been ever since. So I play with no problems.
How often do you play these days with Donnie?
Yeah, once a month.
Oh, okay.
Something like that. We're playing. I don't think there's anything on the calendar. August 6th, we're playing with Journey at the NFL Hall of Fame celebration, which is in Canton. So it's pretty much my second hometown.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, so we're playing with Journey on the 6th of August, and then on the 10th of September we play with REO Speedwagon. Who are the names? Loverboy.
Okay.
And I think Styx, I believe.
Yeah.
At the Star Lake Amphitheater in Pittsburgh. That's
nice.
September 10th.
Yeah.
So yeah, we either do our own shows, around this area. We don't travel now. It's just we could travel, we could get some people in, we could have a good time, but it's hard to make the numbers work. Because as it is, we typically fly in Paul from South Carolina,
right,
and we fly in Kevin from LA and fly them in and put them up. I mean,
it's a lot. Yeah,
it adds a lot to the budget, So
right.
It gets expensive, and to multiply that by everybody else and then go out on the road like we used to do, we just can't make the numbers work. So,
well, I'll make sure on your episode page to put a link to Donnie's site and where folks can find you these days. But I'll make sure I get those pictures up there and everybody can see what you looked like back in the day and come see you these days out there playing with all those other folks.
Yeah.
Thanks
so much, Chip.
Thanks, Marty. This has been great. And everybody in your hometown is proud of you. And, I appreciate you talking to me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Take care.
My thanks to Bob Berger for putting me in touch with Marty this time. And my thanks to you for listening. Make sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons on your podcast app. This is the last episode of Season 3, and I'm going to be taking off the summer before starting Season 4 in the fall. Thanks to the JPT Foundation for their ongoing financial support and for the monthly free music night that we host at their hall featuring the local band, The Fabulous Leftovers, not related to the Fabulous Nobodies that Marty was in. We hold those music events the last Tuesday of every month, so watch for that. You can support the podcast via Venmo or Patreon. Just click on the Support This Podcast link on the homepage for more information. And for more information on what bands or musicians are playing in Erie and the surrounding area, please check out Jack Stevenson's Two-Man Happy Hour podcast and webpage. Two-Man Happy Hour. Check that out. So I'm Chip Shell, your host, and I'll be back in the fall of 2022 with new episodes. In the meantime, get out there and support live local music. Take care.